Oh, hang on.
Sorry.
Yeah. I don't know, really. I dealt with it the best I could. You know, it was a more nuts and bolts world then. There wasn't the internet. If you were dealing with somebody, they had to come and see you, or you had to go and see them. You sat down and talked to them.
Yep.
There wasn't decisions being made by somebody sitting at a computer. So you kind of knew what was going on most of the time. So it seemed to me, looking back, a lot easier to be successful then, because it was just more primitive. Nowadays, you just learn how to deal with it. You know, I mean, it's people are people, and the road is the road. We leave for the road tomorrow, you know, but I mean, it doesn't faze me anymore. I kind of know I've grown up, you know, I mean, I've really, you know, become an adult, so it's all easier.
What about, obviously you've written many, many songs over the years. Do you get a special feeling when you write a hit song? Or is that something that only takes off later when it moves out into the world and achieves commercial success? Do you get a special feeling?
Yeah, you do. You know, if you've written something that you think is really good and people respond to it, there's nothing quite like it. I mean, it's like you're sharing a part of yourself when you write a song. You're trying to communicate with people. You're not writing it for yourself. You know, I mean, I do write for myself in as much as that I don't try to write commercially oriented songs. But when you do write something that people respond to, that understand, it is very satisfying, you know.
Yeah.
And if it charts and it goes, I mean, I don't know what charting means these days, because, you know, I mean, there's people on Spotify just listening to your music. There's Apple. There's you know, MP3s. People are, you put a record out and it just goes. It goes out into the air, you know, the ether. So it isn't like it used to be, like you'd be #1 on the Billboard charts or top 50 or whatever. It's just now it's out there, and maybe it's a smaller world, and it's just as gratifying. But you try and write at a level that's honest, that people can, you don't feel like you're talking down to anybody. You're trying to talk to people like we're talking. You try and keep that, you know, and not just disappear into very simplistic bullshit, really.
And after the Babies, of course, you went on to Bad English. That was actually the first time that you came up across my own personal musical radar. What a great band that was. I just wondered how you view that time, that period of your life with Bad English.
Well, you know, I remember being in Lancaster and visiting my folks, and they'd FedExed, couriered the video for Forget Me Not to let me see it, to okay it, and it got there about 8:30 in the morning, and it was a brilliant sunshiny day, and I remember playing it to my parents, and my parents looking at me like, what's that, you know? But it was a big production video, and I remember, that's one of my sharpest memories of still maintaining my roots in England, and yet being on that roller coaster of stepping into a worldwide successful thing. And the sunshine, you know, I mean, I was still pretty young. It was exciting. You know, I knew it was going to be #1. Everybody seems to be having a great time, great management. Album was great. We'd worked hard on it. It was a good time. You know, I think we had a great time for about a year before we just started to chafe against, you know, each other and, you know, who's going to say what, you know, it was just as things go.
It was a great time, the 80s. I mean, for melodic rock, you had MTV, of course, and then you did a US tour with Whitesnake. That must have been really, really good, exciting times for the band and yourself.
Yeah, we were doing, with Coverdale, we were doing like, you know, we're playing like 5,000 seats a night. And then we'd go off in the odd days that he wasn't playing and play clubs, big clubs, like 1,000 people. And they were packed every night. There was no chance of us not selling it out. But it helped pay the bills to keep us on the road, and we loved to play. So, you know, it was a great time. I mean, it's great to be, you know, accepted on that level and be busy. And then you pick up the magazines and you see that it really is happening. It's not just smoke and mirrors. You know, you're really making a big impact. You know.
Yeah. Any explanation for why the second album, Backlash, didn't achieve the same level of success? I mean, because it's a great album. You've got tracks in that like Time Stood Still, which still sounds brilliant today.
Yeah, it's a good song, that. Yeah, but there was things like, there was like this power struggle, you know, like Jonathan and me didn't really see eye to eye on anything. He's very mainstream and I'm always trying to bring something fresh to it. So we didn't write when we were on the road. It was a sad thing because me and Neil would start things off in soundcheck and he'd just walk off. So we came back to LA, or I was in New York, but we came back and got a phone call. You got to make a record. You just need one or you're going to lose all this momentum, right? And we got in the studio, you know, we got together and stuff, and we'd lost a lot of time because of the infighting. You know, we should have just shut up and sat down and joined in, and we'd had more to offer, frankly. You know, I mean, Time Stood Still, me and Ricky wrote that. You know, it's like, you know, it's not like the ideas weren't there. It's Jonathan and I, he wanted to sound like Journey and I wanted to sound like something like Bad English. Yeah. So, you know, you always get that competition with people. And I think it backfired on him and it kind of ruined the band.
Yeah. Do you prefer being a solo artist out of that, out of that band structure?
Well, it depends who's in the band. I mean, someone like Neil, you just plug in and you sing something and he's right there. You know, he wants to write a song. He's a very fiery player and he's really inspired to play. So that's a joy. You know, if you're with somebody that's like making sure he doesn't show up on time and he's trying to show you that he doesn't give a fuck, you know, it's like, oh man, grow the fuck up. You know, what are we doing here if you're not going to throw yourself into it, you know? And but when you're solo, people show up because you're paying them, you know, it's your band. And I choose people that are sort of conscientious, diligent, committed people. I'm not into politics. You know, if you're in a band, we all pull together. We all travel together. We all sit down and eat together and everybody can say what they want to say. And if we're playing something and it's wrong, we can stop and say, you know, hey man, you're dropping a ball there. That's not good. You know, there's no politics. But that seems to be more the thing when you're solo. When you're in a band, there's always that tension. There's always that sort of ongoing subplot to a lot of things.
Yeah. Tell me about the idea behind the Wooden Heart series and how it's evolved from your volume 1 EP back in 2014. What was your idea behind it?
Yeah, well, you know, I always wanted to make an acoustic record. I mean, half of my influences are like folk music, believe it or not. You know, folk music, Celtic, Scottish, Irish, and cowboy music since I was a little kid. And you put those together with the blues and you got kind of rock and roll. But instead of it being country meets blues, for me, it's like folk meets blues, which is way different. And I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good one. And that's, you know, the acoustic thing. Everything I ever loved when I was a little kid came off the acoustic guitar. And the first experience I had of a guitar was my cousin Michael playing this great big National Dobro guitar and loving the sound of it and loving the look of it. And Michael looking at me and playing me like Freight Train, all these skiffle songs. I loved it. And in the 90s, everybody made acoustic records, unplugged, right? And I was listening to Dylan and Fairport Convention and the Clancy Brothers and the Dubliners and God, you know, Sandy Denny and all those guys. But I was always, you know, in rock as well. Yeah. But when it quietened down, and the reason I moved to Nashville in the 90s was simply the acoustic guitar. I just love the sound of it. And even though I make my bread and butter being a rock singer and I love everything about it, I got a powerful voice. You know, when I come home, I play the acoustic. And so there didn't seem to be a reason not to. You know, I didn't feel I was selling out doing it. Nobody was doing it, but the acoustic guitar was prevalent in Nashville because that's the first instrument of country, right? So I felt it was completely okay to do it. And I didn't feel like I was following the herd or anything. I felt like I was doing something I really loved. And then a couple of years later, I went back and did it again. And this time it was the anthology. It was like 14 songs. I recorded some of the hits like Missing You, Isn't It Time, and put the darker songs on there like Downtown, Masterpiece of Loneliness. And that was really enjoyable. Only took about 3 or 4 days. And then with the pandemic, I was climbing the walls and I'd gone in the studio trying to make an electric record, and it didn't work. The songs I was pulling at wouldn't come. So instead of just coming out the studio with nothing in my hands, you know, I said, well, you know, I'll just record a couple of acoustic songs because it's what I love, you know, and I had the guitar player there. So I sent the rest of the band home and did that. And in the end, we started doing things that were great, that I think were better than volume 1 or 2. The Bob Dylan song, Not Dark Yet, and I-95. There were songs there that were just great, you know, like I thought lyrically they were really strong. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to put something out, and people have probably missed the first 2 volumes because it's been under the radar, it wasn't a major release, you know, I'll put them out as a trilogy, because Bob Dylan did the bootleg series 1, 2, 3, and I probably got the idea from that. So I put it out, and it's been really successful. We've sold out the first pressing, and we're in the second, and we're coming to the end of that. So we leave for the road tomorrow with Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo, and we're doing 3 gigs in some really big venues. We're going to do those unplugged. We've done, which like 2 acoustic guitars and a bass guitar, just minus the drums, you know.
Yeah.
But that's a big answer to a small question. Sorry about that.
You're all right. You illustrated there the wide diversity of your musical influences. Are there any musical styles or genres that you haven't yet explored that maybe you would like to dip into?
Yeah, I think as I got older, I've always liked classical music. I mean, I like certain sorts of classical music. I couldn't stand opera when I was a kid. But now with Pavarotti going mainstream, and God bless him, wherever he is, and I've got into Puccini and stuff. Really weird, you know. It's like a strange thing, but you listen to these melodies and this heartbreaking, like Nassim Doma and stuff like that. It's like, fucking hell, that's fantastic, you know. And I'm thinking maybe since I've crossed country and folk and rock and blues and soul, I've done a lot of different sorts of music. Maybe there's something orchestral I could have a look at or experiment with. You underestimate the past sometimes because it's old, you know. But Puccini was like man, he was like a extraordinary human being, like a great looking guy, beautiful wife, kids, the lot, you know. And he had tons of money and he was hugely successful. And he turns around and writes this stuff that's just basically unbelievable. So the more investigating you do with other kinds of music, the more doors open. So hopefully I'll keep moving forward, you know.
You mentioned they're touring with Pat Benatar. Do you have any plans to sort of tour Europe?
Well, we were going to come to Holland. We should have been there like 2 weeks ago. We had 10 dates in Holland that were confirmed, that were really selling. We do very well in Holland. The Dutch, I've always had a strong relationship with like Golden Earring and Herman Brood, and the guy who runs my website, Waite, he's Dutch. I have a strong connection there. And we were looking at that like, well, we're near Germany, so we'll go to Germany. Then, well, come on, there's France. And I was planning a kind of European tour out of Holland. Whether we'd have got to Britain, I don't know, because you got to get on a boat and get across the ocean, but the Irish Sea and stuff. So, but I mean, we were really going to have a look at that. We've been to Europe a few times and it's been great, and it's home for me. But with the pandemic, the promoters can't get people into the gigs and keep them 6 feet apart when they want to do that and make a profit. The 6 feet apart is probably 1-2 people, and those tickets right there would be the profit for the promoters. So we've had to postpone it again. It's the second time. But going out touring here in America, you get tested before you go into sound check. You know, you get a nasal swab. I'm vaccinated twice. I was in Europe about 3 months ago visiting my mum. It's pretty stringent, but I think if you're up for it and you play the game, there's no reason why we can't all be in one room at the same time, you know. But I think that's coming very quickly, and we'll come back and over the tour, you know.
Has the lack of touring and obviously the lack of income from touring caused you as an artist to think outside of the box in terms of revenue sources?
Well, you know, with Spotify, you know, they always used to say you can't make money off. There's about 2% of the bands in the world that can stay at home and release music, like the Eagles. You know, they just make a giant amount of money all the time. Elton John, Rod Stewart, they can stay home, have kids, do whatever they want, you know. But the other 98% really need to tour, because Spotify was the last nail in the coffin of the musician making a living playing music. I mean, Spotify, you get paid some arbitrary figure that nobody even knows what they pay you, but it's like 2 cents on the dollar. It's like a mad thing. And they might get your record, your music played a billion times, but you get paid like $100. So, and now with the pandemic and people not being able to work for like a year and a half, you couldn't even make a living going out and playing live. It's very unfair on the musician at the moment. And people are demanding the musician to come out like, we need you, come back. But I wish somebody would step into Spotify and just try and get the artist paid. I think it's a very unfair situation. There isn't one musician I know that hasn't felt the pinch because of that. Because if you write something, you go in the studio and you pay the band, you pay the studio, the engineers, you pay for the production of the record, the photo for the front, you have the publishing splits. It's like a massive thing to make a record. It's very expensive. And then there's no chance of making it back because of Spotify. So you're always running at a loss. And if you can't play live, you know, it's good night Vienna. Do
you think it's more difficult to be a professional musician in 2021 compared to the days when you started?
Well, like I just said, yes, I mean, when you start off, you're playing, like I used to play the Marquee Club in London with 2 other guys for £5. And we thought we'd hit the pools, you know, £5, but £5 back then was probably about £25 now. When I play, I come home with my pockets stuffed full of money, you know, but I've paid a lot of dues and I've worked for free. I've not been paid for a lot of records I made. I've been ripped off. And at the other side of it, I've done very well, survived, had to get, you know, in the game and you know, become a businessman. It's not really what I want to do, but I've got to pay attention because it's a dangerous business. But I mean, I make a great living when I go out and play, and it isn't wasted on me. But I did spend a very, very long time barely breaking even, and sometimes going into debt, you know, for like 20 years. You know, that's what it's like. Somebody told me the other day that Def Leppard were somewhere on the 3rd album or something, were $1 million in debt, and there was no hope of getting out of it. And when I was in the Babies, you know, the band The Babies, we were $1 million in debt, and we didn't get out of it. But Def Leppard did. But I mean, it's all, you know, the luck of the draw, really.
When do you release music yourself these days? You don't go through a third-party record company or anything like that?
No.
All
I
yourself?
got a distributor, which puts it in the stores. I have Jody Glissman, who connects me to you know, an old friend of mine. She's a sort of promoter. The internet itself is word of mouth on a massive scale. If you're going to go on tour and you got a new record out, everybody in the universe knows it. And you know, it takes, I mean, it's an expensive thing making a record, but an actual CD costs about $1.15 to make. Now, there's a huge amount of money spent to make that thing on a CD.
Yeah.
But if it's your money and you're sort of like really getting favors in and friends are playing with you and you pull some strings and you make it all happen, you kind of wonder what the fuck you were doing in the first place, going into a record company, sitting at the wrong side of a desk, talking to somebody that's paying you 15, if you're lucky, 15% on 100. You got to pay it all back out of that 15% too. And you're always going to be broke. I mean, since I started my own label, I've made a considerable amount of money. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having your own label. I've been around the block. I've been on the major labels in the world. And the last 20 years or so, when I've been buying back my records and putting them out under my own label, I'm actually getting paid for what I do, which is like, and it isn't just the road where I make the money. Now, I make a living on the road and I actually get paid for the work I do as a recording artist. So not bad,
Yeah. Just a couple to finish on. What would be the first music that you remember hearing growing up? Maybe on something on the radio?
Probably Brenda Lee. I had a gigantic crush on Brenda Lee when I was about 5. My cousin Carol gave me a record and a record player. Very nice of her. But she had a single out. I don't know what it was called. I forget. Sweet Nothings or something. I don't know. But the B-side was Everybody Loves Me But You. And like true friends, they still come around and say, I'm sorry you're blue. Everybody loves me but you. And I just fell in love with Brenda Lee. By extension, that's country. That's like a pop country. And I started reading about Nashville and Memphis, and she was my first in, really, to the opposite sex singing music that I responded to, that I found romantic. And I was only like 5. But I mean, I remember that very well. And Marty Robbins, all the cowboy songs, that was just America, it's like being 5 and 6 and hearing about High Noon and the lore of the American West, because that turned into rock and roll. It couldn't have been more natural,
What about the first song that you ever performed live? Can you recall that?
Well, yeah, my brother was in a band, and I'd gone to sort of like at a youth club in Lancaster, and he was about 17. I was about 13. And he was you couldn't get any beer at this youth club, obviously. So the bass player had gone off to get a pint of beer, and we had to go back on, or my brother Joe had to go back on. And he put a bass around my neck and said, play this note. And we played Jimi Hendrix's Third Stone from the Sun. And he went off on a jazz improvisation. And I was stood there, this great big bass drum, and playing this, whatever, an A or whatever. And all my friends came out of the back, and all the girls came out the sides. And there I was, in the spotlight for the first time. But it was an enormous thing. I mean, it was like there wasn't even a stage. It was just like the other end of the hall, But that was, I remember putting the guitar down afterwards and walking into my friends, and it was like, wow. And they were going like, wow. So it was a big deal,
Yeah. Just a couple to finish. Do you have any interests or hobbies outside music?
Yeah, I paint. I went to art school, and look at this. Look at this, man. This is the album cover. It's a poster we sell, but I drew that, and that's the inspiration really for doing Wooden Heart 1, 2, 3. But I went to art school for 4 years. I was one of the lucky ones that didn't have to run off after school and get a job at the post office. I mean, I really loved to paint, and I wasn't good at anything else. And so they let me go to art school, and I've painted all my life. I've drawn, painted. It's been the other love of my life. It's been music and art. But I paint, and we sell them on the internet. I mean, johnwaiteworldwide.com. there's a whole range of subjects. Patti Smith, Eric Satie. There's like abstracts. There's figurative stuff, and then there's these selfie things, and it's great. You know, on the road, you're driving like for 5 hours. You pull out a sketchbook and sketch the scenery or the, you know,
Yeah.
it's just really good. It's good for your brain. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a final one. I'm sure you've done many, many interviews since you first started. But if the roles were reversed, who would you like to interview?
Oh wow, Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
I think it depends how you want to approach it, but I think Bob would be a very interesting interview if you could head him off. And but then again, you know, I mean, Bob Dylan has given us so much over the last 50 years. You have to leave somebody something, you know. I don't really want to know what he has for breakfast. I met him once in Tokyo. A friend of mine, we were coming into the hotel, and there was Bob sat in the middle of all these Japanese tourists, having a martini or something, you know, in a white suit. And my manager said, "Do you want to meet Bob?" And it was like, "Are you kidding?" And I walked up, and he stood up and he shook my hand, asked how the tour was going. Very pleasant guy, you know, very interested. And I stepped back after that. I thought that's enough, you know. And the manager talked to him about something else, and I said goodbye. But I mean, you know, I'm a Bob fan. I mean, I'm sort of like, you know, we did Not Dark Yet on the anthology, the new release, and that was, I think that's one of my better moments as a singer. You know, I tried to do it justice.
That's great, John. I'll let you get on. I understand you have a busy interview schedule ahead of you today, so I'll let you get on. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, and God bless you, and you know, all the best.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.